Good day. Last week, I've let you download or sent to you this course syllabus for our subject in the Financial Management or AE 118. So in the syllabus, you can see here the course description. The, this course covers the introduction to financial management and finance. The course employs different techniques that help analyze the figures in the financial statement, which should then be useful in decision making, management of assets and liabilities, profit maximization. The topics include cash flows, financial analysis, current asset management, current liability management, and time value of money. So, what is financial management? So, as what was discussed last semester or last year, the definition of accounting is it is a service activity. Its function is to provide quantitative information, primarily financial in nature, about economic activities that is intended to be useful in making economic decision. So, but in our basic accounting, there is no discussion as to how the financial statements will be useful in making economic decision. So in this subject, we'll be discussing how these financial statements would guide the decision makers in making the right decision. So for our first week is the discussion of the course syllabus. So I've sent to you the course syllabus last week, but I've told you that I cannot discuss yet because I haven't recorded anything, or so this is my first recording for this subject. So unfortunately, we have unstable internet connection in the college. So second week is the introduction to financial management. Third week and fourth week is cash flows. So as you can see here, 2 weeks are allocated to the statement of cash flows. So the statement of cash flows is the most complicated financial statements. So you have discussed before the statement of cash flows in the basic accounting, but now we are going to use the statement of cash flows in evaluating and also predicting in making economic decisions. So our fifth week to seventh week is the financial statement analysis. So the financial statement analysis would compose of different ratios, different evaluations, different interpretations of the financial statements. So in the statement of financial analysis, we will also be using the different financial statements such as income statement, balance sheet, changes in equity, and cash flows. For our 8th week to 10th week, that would be our working capital and current asset management. So how assets are managed. So cash is very susceptible to theft. So how do you manage that? Inventories also are very susceptible to theft, expiration, and etc. So how do companies manage that? Accounts receivable, what happens when someone is not paying, or how do you manage those receivables? For our 11th week to 12th week, that would be our current liabilities management. And then in our 13th week to 15th week is the time value of money. So time value of money is so we have discussed in our basic accounting the stable monetary fund, right? that the peso value of specific the peso value will not change over time, but it is not actually happening in the real world because, for example, our 50 now may not be the same as our 50 after 10 years or after 20 years. And then for the last topic, we have techniques for valuing bonds and stocks. So you were also given the instructional manual for this subject. So unfortunately, it is not yet complete. It is from chapter 1 to chapter 5. So and then we have the full. Actually, this is also a draft. I've so this was made 2018 and then it was revised noong 2019. It's actually the full answer key here is not yet done, so you cannot use that. So this is our second week, so we will be discussing the introductions to financial management. So, introduction to financial management. So, the purpose of the chapter, number one, to define finance, its major areas and opportunities, and the legal form of business organization. Number two, to understand the managerial finance function and its relationship to economics and accounting. Number three, to know the primary activities of a financial manager. Number four, to explain the goals of the firm's cooperate governance, the rule of ethics, and the agency issues. And the last one is to understand financial institution and markets and the role they play in managerial finance. So first, let's define what is finance. So finance is a broad term that describes two related activities: the study of how money is managed and the actual process of acquiring needed funds. It encompasses the oversight, creation, and study of money, banking, credits, investments, assets, and liabilities that make up financial systems. Next, what is management? So management is often included as a factor of production along with machines, materials, and money. According to the management guru Peter Drucker, the basic task of management includes both marketing and innovation. Practice of modern management originated from the 16th century study of laws, efficiency, and failures of certain enterprise conducted by English statesman Sir Thomas More. Management consists of interlocking functions of creating corporate policy and organizing, planning, controlling, and directing an organization's resources in order to achieve the objectives of the policy. So actually, the main definition or the main core definition na kailangan lang natin is this one. So, it encompasses organizing, planning, controlling, directing organization's resources. So, parang ganun din yung financial management natin. So, what is the definition of financial management? So, financial management means planning, organizing, directing, and controlling the financial activities such as procurement, the utilization of funds of the enterprise. It means in applying general management principles to financial resources of the enterprise. So financial management has focus on risk and return relationship. So risk and return relationship, if the return is greater than the risk, so you should implement the decision. If the risk is greater than the return, you could have to look for another alternative for your decision. So for example, you've decided that you will put up a warehouse to manage your inventories. So let's say the inventories is only, say, 10 kilograms. So malit lang siya. 10 kilograms of rice, example. So are you going to put that into warehouse? So the obvious answer is no, because the risk is greater than the return, or the cost is greater than the return. So when you put up a warehouse, either you make a rent or you build your own warehouse. If you build your own warehouse, you have to pay for the securities, security guards, CCTV, lightings, ventilation, because there are products that need to be ventilated properly. So let's say the cost is 10,000 per month for the utilities and the salary of the security guard, for a 10 kilo rice. So the 10 kilo rice, say the value is around 450, and then you multiply that to the chances that it would be stolen. Say the chances of it being stolen, if not in a warehouse, is 20%. So that is 90. So 10,000 versus 90. Obviously 10,000 is greater, so the risk is higher than the return. So you should look for another alternative. So reversing the decisions naman, if positive naman na mas mataas yung return kaysa sa risk. So example is, you are managing your cash. So sa cash, kailangan siya nakabangko, right? So sometimes naman, hindi mo naman binabank yung cash, nasa vault siya. And then ang problema kasi sa na nakabank yung cash is what we call the floats. So it is from the time that the issuance of the check to the granting of the release. Kasi pag mataas yung cheque, merong time pa, parang in-evaluate pa nila if tama ba yung signature, if it is not forged, and etc. Pag 10,000 yung resibo, pag 10,000 yung cheque, mawi-withdraw mo agad. But if the check is worth 100 million, it would take some time. So that is one of the cost naman ng pag-maintain ng pera dun sa bangko. So pag sa vault is you can just withdraw, hindi mo naman kailangan na eto yung cheque, vault, withdraw mo ko ng 100 million. So pag naka-vault siya, readily magbilang ka na lang ng pera and then okay na. So let's say ang estimated na nako-cost nung flotation mo is 50,000, and then yung value lang nung vault is 20,000. So, mas magandang bumili ka na lang ng vault kaysa magkalos ka ng 50,000 from the flotation. So, financial management managers attempt to maximize to wealth maximization through daily activities such as credit and inventory management and through long-term decision related by raising funds. So, ang ginagawa ng financial management is hindi lang nagmamanage ng mga inventories, credits, they are also involved in raising funds. So there are three ways to raise a fund. That is, number one is through income. Siyempre, pag nagkaka-income ka, tumataas din yung wealth nyo. Number two is through loans. And then number three is through stocks. Siyempre, yung income, hindi mo na kailangan yun na i-consider na meron siyang cost. So, yung merong dalawang cost is yung bonds and yung stocks. Yung bonds kasi is kailangan mong magbayad ng interest. While the stocks, kailangan mong magbigay ng dividends. What is the main difference of the two? For bonds, the interests are fixed. So, meaning, magbabayad ka ng, for example, magbabayad ka ng 5,000 a month. That is your interest. So, it is fixed. So, 5,000 a month. So, every month, you'll have to pay 5,000. But for stocks or dividends, hindi siya fixed. It is based. Sa stocks pala, there are two types of stocks. You have the preference and the common. So for preference, it is like a liability. So fixed din siya. So there are different types of preference bonds, as was discussed in the partnership and corporation, but generally they are treated as a liability. So parang liability siya kasi nagbabayad ka ng interest every month or every year. Pero there are other types of preference share. So we'll discuss that also later on. And then for stocks, for the common stocks, ang dinidistribute natin is based on the income. So example, if you have 500,000 income, you can distribute 400,000 na shares or na dividends. So depende siya sa management. Depende kung ano yung magiging decision nila. So what we are going to compute as the cost is yung share niya dun sa income. So for example, nagbenta ka ng 10,000 na common stocks. At yung whole na company na yon is yung stocks nyo is 100,000. So ilang percent yung share niya? That is 10,000 divided by 100,000. It is 10%. 10% of the common stocks is sa kanya. Which also means that pag walang preference share, 10% of the income also belongs to him. So, yung cost niya is yung 10% ng income. So, which is not fixed kasi ang income naman yearly is hindi siya fixed. Okay. We'll just discuss those later on. This is just an introduction. Objectives of financial management. Financial management is generally concerned with the procurement, allocation, and the control of financial resources of a concern. Its objectives are number one, to regulate an adequate supply of funds to the concern. Number two, to ensure adequate returns to the shareholders, which will depend upon the earning capacity, market price of the share, expectation of the shareholders. So generally, yung return ng shareholders should be greater than the interest. Kasi, for example, the bank is offering a 12% interest, and then ang nakakain nyo lang i-return is 10%. The tendency is that your shareholders will back off from your business and will just invest their money through the banks kasi mas mataas yung returns nila. So, not necessarily, sabi dito is adequate returns, not just returns. So, not necessarily if nagkaka-income ka, maganda na yun. Because when you do not give the shareholders an adequate returns, although you are earning, they may back off from your business. Number 3, to ensure optimum funds utilization. Once the funds are procured, they should be utilized to the maximum possible at least cost. So what do you mean by this? So there are times that we have money in the business that we are not actually utilizing. So imagine a business having a cash of 100 million. So for example, your total equity is only 150 million and your cash is 100 million. Your other asset is 50 million. So that is your financial statements. So are you fully utilizing your funds? The answer is no, because the 100 million cash is just sitting there. So cash is a high risk asset. Madali siyang manakaw, madaling bumaba yung value niya, konting inflation lang or konting changes lang dun sa ating foreign exchange, the value of that cash will decrease. So it is a very high risk. So how do you utilize the 100 million? So pwede kang mag-invest in an operating segment na nag-i-income. So pwede kang using that 100 million, you can put up another store, ibang store. So nag-i-income siya. Or you can invest it somewhere. So para hindi mamatay yung pera or para hindi maging stagnant yung pera. So dapat the money is always working. Next is to ensure safety of investment. Funds should be invested in safe ventures so that adequate return can be achieved. So hindi lang naman isang pwede mo kasing pag-investan. So you can choose a lot of where to invest. So when you go to PSE, you can see a lot of company there. So pwede kang mag-invest dun. So what is the safest? Job yun ng financial management. Next, to plan a sound capital structure. There should be a sound and fair composition of capital so that the balance is maintained between debt and equity capital. So, imagine if your company, 80% nun is utang, 20% nun is capital. So, what would happen? Meaning, baon kayo sa utang. At pag baon kayo sa utang, most of your income is just going to pay the interest. So, income mo na sana, pinangbayad mo pa ng interest. Primary activities of a financial manager. Number 1, estimate of capital requirement. So, magkano ba ang kailangan para mag-put up ng isang business? For example, that business is a karinderya. Do you need 100 million? So the answer is no. So that is also a job of the financial management to estimate how much yung kailangan mo. And then, kung saan manggagaling yung kailangan mo. Is it for short-term loans, long-term loans, or your capital? And then, choice of sources of funds. So, is it through the issuance of shares or debts, loans from banks or other financial institutions, public deposits to be drawn, like in the form of bonds, and etc. And then investment of funds. The financial management has to decide to allocate funds in profitable ventures. So there is a safety of investment and regular returns is possible. Disposal of surplus. So the net profits decision have to be made by the financial manager. This can be done in two ways. We have dividend declaration and retainment of profits. So retainment of profits, we also call this the retained earnings. So pag yung income mo, for example, is 100,000, 60,000 is you declared as dividends, the 40,000 would go to the retainment of profits. So what is the use of the retained profits? So the volume has to be decided, which will depend upon the expansion, innovation, diversification of plans of the company. So the retained earnings will be used for the expansion, innovation, or diversification, and it can also be used to sustain losses. So if there are losses in the next year, at least we still have funds kasi meron kang hindi dineclared na dividends, which is retained earnings. Then we have the management of cash. So naka-specific dito yung cash because cash is parang the most important assets. Also, siya yung makadaling manakaw. Siya yung pinakamadaling mawala. Kasi if nanakaw man yung cash mo, hindi mo alam. Unlike pag nanakaw yung cellphone mo. Kasi pag nanakaw yung cellphone mo, you can call that, tas pag nag-ring, alam mong nandun. Meron pa yung wallpaper, makikita mo kung wallpaper mo yun, and etc. But for cash, meron naman, makikita mo naman kung kabisado mo yung serial number. So sa inyo ba, kabisado nyo ba yung serial number? Of course not. So, siya yung pinakamadaling manakaw. Financial controls. So, the financial manager has not only to plan, procure, and utilize funds, but he has to exercise control over finances. So, this can be done by many techniques such as ratio analysis, financial forecasting, cost and profit control. Use of financial management in daily lives. So students can use the different techniques in the financial management such as budgeting for predicting future expenses and allocating their current resources to cover possible future expenditures. So, example tayo let's say that your daily allowance is 100, and then so in a week that is 700, right? So how do you budget that? So assuming you are planning to buy a book and So, yung cost niya is, let's say, 450. So, you only have 350 left. So, natira na lang sa'yo for food is 350. So, now, hindi naman cash yung 350 for your food. So, let's say, ang normally nagagastos mo for food is 500 per week. Kasi nagme-merienda ka pa, nagme-milk tea ka pa, and etc. So, yung 150, kailangan mong source of funds. So, yung source of funds mo sa 150 is possible is friends. Pag friends, that is considered a long term or short term. So, it is a short term liability / bad debts. Char. So, that is considered a short term liability. So, nagamit mo na dito yung financial management. So, first is tinignan mo yung available na resources mo, and then your possible expenses for the week, and then nag-source out ka ng funds. Next is the reconciliation of the cash balance using the statement of cash flows. So, sometimes may mga classmates tayo na memorize, or tayo mismo na memorize natin yung ginagastos natin in a week. So, for example, is again your daily allowance of 100, and then ang na-compute mo lang na nagastos mo for this week is, let's say, 650. So, you should have a 50 pesos left in your pocket. But unfortunately, you can only see 20 pesos in your pocket. So, where is the 30 pesos? So, that's your question. So, possible na yung 30 pesos mo na yun is nanakaw, or meron kang expenses na hindi na-record. So, you can reconcile your cash balance. And then, you have the simple investment decisions. So, for investments, when you have enough money siguro to invest, but we don't have an available way to invest, for example, 100 pesos and it will earn 1 pesos in 1 year, so we don't have something like that. So let's have an exercise. So exercise 1, in your own definition, what is financial management? Inside situation wherein student can apply financial management. So aside from yung sinabi ko kanina, okay, and try to be creative on how financial management is used by students. So thank you, and that's it for our first chapter, or that's it for our this week